As we mentioned before, in consulting methods, we will be talking about two very nice, simple methods, top-down approach and bottom-up approach. They are mainly used by consultants, and they require from you a little bit of imagination and a lot of analytical thinking. Excel in this method is also very useful. Bear in mind that this is not only used by consultants, actually the main method used by theoretical economists, which try to first simplify the phenomena they are trying to analyze, to understand it, and then once they understand it, they complicate it by adding additional features, additional variables which are changing the whole picture. In the bottom-up approach, we always have to think about single typical user and then from him move to the market research estimation. So first you try to imagine the user, who he is and how he looks and how he behaves. On the basis of this, you try to estimate how much of the good you are trying to sell him he's using over the year. Is it something which stays with him for 1 day, 2 days, or is it something he's going to use for years, and this would change totally the approach. And then on the basis of this, having the number of users, typical users, having the average consumption, you can try to estimate the size of the market. Sometimes it makes much more sense to divide the market into segments and estimate them separately. So you can imagine that you have a typical users and heavy users, or you can have men and women, or you can just have the segmentation done by lifestyle. One way or the other, if you do it with segments, it is a bit more complicated, but it gives you a much better result, and it shows you the difference between the users, and then it's actually more useful for the applications because you know to what segment you should devote more time, what segment is more important. Now let's go to example, so you're able to understand it in a better manner. Imagine that you are trying to build an application from franchise restaurants. So we will try to estimate the number of such restaurants in your area, in your country. In this case it will be Poland. So what we do, we pick the sample, we pick the area from which we're gonna gather some simple data and use it to scale it up to the whole region. In this case it will be Warsaw. In Warsaw we count the number of all restaurants in the area. For this you can use sites which are providing reviews on restaurants. In the case of Poland it's Gastronauci.pl. In the USA you would have OpenTable. In UK you might be looking at the taste card. You will find the links in the resources provided to this lecture. Once you have it, try to estimate what is the percentage of the franchise restaurants in the sample, and once you have done that, you can go to scaling up using the population of Poland, and this is how you get estimated number of franchise restaurants. This method is very simple, but obviously it's not ideal. It assumes the fact that let's say the Warsaw is representative and you can scale it up. But to be honest, in the case of the initial research, especially when you're wondering whether it makes sense or not to enter such business, it is very, very good, and actually you can do it within an hour. Now let me show you how you should do it in Excel. Before we start analyzing the Excel, let me just give you a short introduction into how the Excels are built, because we're going to use those rules for each and every Excel in the rest of the course. So first of all, we're using 3 colors. White, which means that there are like calculations. Then we also use yellow and blue. Yellow is used for things which we calculated and we are sure that this is the right number. Blue is done for assumptions. Here you will find how much it is, and also in the comments we put the source of the data. Additional thing is that whenever we are estimating one of the variables, we're using the pyramid principle. So we put everything which is used to estimate certain variable just below, so we can check it and be aware how it is being done and to know whether it's right or wrong. So in this case, we estimated the number from our franchise restaurants in Poland on the basis of the restaurants in the Poland and assumed a percentage of franchise restaurants from Warsaw. So those two are directly below this one. And then for the restaurants in Poland, we use the number of restaurants in Warsaw and also the population of Warsaw in Poland. So this is everything down below. So as we can see from the data, we had 1,000 restaurants on record in Warsaw. The population we used to scale it up and get the 22,000 restaurants in the whole Poland. We also assume that in Warsaw we have 40% franchise restaurants. This has to be checked. Which gives you almost 9,000 potential customers, franchise restaurants. Potential customers, we're going to actually calculate on the basis of those 9,000 and assumed percentage of customers which would be interested in our application. And this, as you can see, is blue, has to be checked during the interviews and then has to be checked during the first month of sales. And then you will get a good data. So out of this, we get roughly 2,600 customers which would be interested in our product. We also estimated here the revenues of our enterprise in Polish zloty, annual revenues. So we assumed 3 plans. We assumed what percentage would go for which plan, and then we also assumed prices, and then this gives you almost 1 million zloty, which is roughly 250,000 euros. And this is assuming that the user would be customers, individual customers, but the payer would be the restaurants. We can also imagine ourselves in a situation where actually the customer, the end customer and the payer are the same people, so it is paid by customers. So here we have a similar calculations. We look at the number of people in the age bracket 30-39 in Poland. We assume that 30% of them would be using, and we assume that actually they're gonna pay it and they're gonna use some of the plan. Now let's go to a second infamous example of the dog food market. We will try to estimate it using the bottom-up approach as well. So we basically look at our friends and check how many dogs they've got. Once we have the dogs, we calculate how many dogs are in the whole group and how many actually households those friends of ours comprise. It is important to rather concentrate on the households than on the population, because the dogs are rather linked with the households, not with the individuals. Now we check the number of households in Poland and we get the number of dogs, and that's the first part. So we know how many dogs there are in Poland. Once we know the size of the market of the dogs, we have to somehow transfer it into food. So we actually have to check for the sample we're using, so our friends, how much food is being consumed on average by a dog. Once we have it, we can estimate the whole market. Again, let's go to the Excel and show you how it is being done in Excel. In Excel, we do it exactly as it was shown in PowerPoint. So we first estimate the number of dogs in Poland. So we get the number of dogs in our sample, then we look how many household it is, and then we get from statistical data how many households there are in Poland, and on the basis of this we get the number of dogs, which is like 4.5 million dogs. Then assuming that 30% of them are actually using dog food, again something which has to be checked because this is not it is not the data from any research, we get almost 250 tons of food. And this actually gives you an idea of the size of the market and also of the value. On the basis of this, you can estimate what would be your earnings from the market, assuming obviously some gross margin, and whether it makes sense